Hello everybody, welcome to Little Rusty Bucket. Subscribe to the channel and drop a like on this video and check us out over on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. That is my Rusty Buckets intro. You don't have that here, Jacob. We're talking about The Last of Us Part 2 Season 2, which there's going to be a Last of Us Part 2 Season 3, which has certainly taken me off guard. I don't know how privy people were to that information, but I did not know that until I got to episode 7 of the show and was very confused by the blazing speed in which things were happening, because it really felt like the show was not paced well at all, even for being split into two. But I've wanted to just do reviews of shows that I watch immediately after for the longest time, but I didn't really like it on the film channel because I didn't just want it to be short-sighted like this. But here I'm just yapping. I'm probably not going to touch on every point, but I did write a few bullet points to try and touch on everything, because The Last of Us is very near and dear to my heart. This tattoo, oh man, how do I get an angle on this? There's like no way to do it. It says endure and survive with Ellie's knife. It's from The Last of Us, the only tattoo I have. I got a tattoo when I was like 22, and I was like, wow, that was awesome. I want a million more of these. What if I just never found the time or money to do it again for 3-4 more years? But I love The Last of Us 1, and I had conflicting feelings about the second game. I actually did a review on it forever ago on my IDK Films channel, so if you want to hear my thoughts on the game from a long time ago, then you're welcome to do that. But as far as the show went, when I saw season 1, I was like, okay, I'm just hoping that they don't butcher this. I'm hoping that it does the job of translating this well enough in a way that like my mom can understand. Because while I'm normally one to shit on the idea of an adaptation, I specifically really hate animation to live action adaptations. And I also really hate rather foreign films to like American adaptations. I think that is whack, because just enjoy that in the medium that it's meant to be enjoyed in if you're already watching movies anyways, or TV. However, a video game, a lot of people aren't going to play video games. Video game, especially one as long as The Last of Us 1, but especially The Last of Us Part 2, is just something that's not super accessible to a lot of people. Not a lot of people game, not a lot of people do story games when they do game, is what it is. So I felt like it had the utility of, this is a great story that when translated well onto a different medium will do well, and I think it did largely for season 1 of The Last of Us. I, as someone who knows the story front and back 1,500 times over, I was mostly just watching it for the sake of the curiosity of what would be different, and I was actually pleasantly surprised by much of the changes. I really, in particular, liked the opening scenes from the first 2 episodes. I wish they had managed to keep that kind of idea the whole time, like the interview with the scientist at the start. I just thought that was so cool. I also love the Bill episode. The Bill episode is one of the best episodes of TV I've ever watched before. I also thought that Pedro and Bella Ramsey perfectly captured the energy of the characters, and I think that's far more important than them looking the part, which is a hugely contested thing. But when I went into season 2, I knew there was going to be a huge shitstorm, or at least I thought there would be, because of the second game. But based on the numbers I'm seeing from people reviewing the show, based on the discourse online in general, it seems like kind of no one watched it, and I'm not that surprised, but man, it made me a little bit surprised. I wanted to see what they would change. I didn't know that the second game was going to be cut into 2 seasons, like I said, but I initially liked how this season came out of the gate. Like, especially how they handled, I mean, there's spoilers for the game and the show in this thing, sorry to tell you, but spoilers. How they handled Joel's death at the start of the show was really well done. I felt like the fact that Joel doesn't even die after the first episode am I remembering that correctly? Pretty sure he doesn't die after the first episode. I think he dies at the start of the second episode, but I could be mistaken. But the town being under siege at the same time, making it make way more sense for Joel to walk into the lion's den, or the wolf's den in this case, instead of having Tommy with him, having the more inexperienced Dina with him, who's not going to have, because that's the big thing that bothered me about part two is I'm like, I don't know if Joel and Tommy would just walk into this room full of strangers who all have guns, like completely casual, without even a hint of like, hey, who are you? But the initial changes that were good didn't last. I gotta say, the therapist shit was weird. Also, this show has a really weird, really palpable obsession with marijuana that I do not understand. Like the phase that I went through when I first started smoking weed, like any other cringe ass middle class white boy does, of being like, oh man, weed, isn't this cool? You're supposed to get over that over a certain point, but the producers of this show brought up weed as many times as was tangibly possible. It just got weird at a certain point. I felt the need to point that out because I was like, is this a fucking Seth Rogen production? Why have I heard the weed this many times? But what eventually really started to get at me, and I think this is the large thing I've heard people complain about, is the characterization of Ellie. Now here's the thing. A lot of this is being blamed on Bella Ramsey for simply not looking like they are the age that Ellie is in the game. And I do understand where that criticism is coming from. I don't blame that on them for two things. First of all, I think the characterization is more important in terms of how the character behaves. You know, the fact that Ellie is kind of stupid and incompetent in this is a huge problem. And more important, or not more importantly, it's not more important, but something that they really could have done very easily to improve this is just a couple of movie magic things. Like, there's certain angles you can try and hit more. There's makeup you can do. You can literally put stilts on them because, like, fucking Robert Downey Jr. is like 5'8", but he's always like 6 feet tall in all of his Iron Man movies because they put stilts on the man and they just record him at the right angle so he doesn't look weird. Ellie is substantially taller in the second game by contrast to the first game, but not switching between these seasons. Like, literally, Bella Ramsey just was on 5-inch stilts dramatically. It would dramatically improve the scope of the show. In the presentation of an older Ellie, I think that would hit. But I think the problem is they made Ellie dumb. I think that's the bigger problem than anything else. And they made her dumb and simultaneously more rational about how dumb the whole revenge plot is. Now, in the game, the revenge plot is stupid. And it's pretty easy to understand why it's stupid. There's a lot of things being risked here purely for the sake of revenge. Once Dina having a baby is in the equation, my immediate reaction is, I'm pissed as fuck that someone killed Joel because Joel's, along with Ellie, both of my top 2 favorite characters in anything ever. But Dina needs to go home. We can't be doing this. You're gonna die, Ellie. This is stupid. Just take the L and move on with your life. You were already kind of pissed off at the guy. This show makes all of that so obvious, though, because not only is this entire thing being driven by irrational emotion and anger and violent tendencies, but it's also Ellie's not good at being violent. Ellie's not good at killing masses of people. In fact, I believe 3 total people are dead because of Ellie in this entire show, in this entire season of television. You contrast that to how many people you kill throughout the second game. I mean, do you kill 1,000 people before you get to Abby? It feels like you do. Obviously, I'm not expecting that to be translated one-to-one. In fact, I think a big thing that I had a problem with initially with season 1 of The Last of Us that I learned was actually a good thing was how infrequently Joel was getting kills. Because when at the very end he wipes out the hospital, him, killing 15 people in one go feels like a huge deal. Whereas if he had 2 scenes doing that earlier on in the show, it wouldn't have worked. You have to scale things down. I understand that. She kills 3 people, and 2 of them were on accident. 2 of them she's like immediately apologetic for. She's like, oh shit, I didn't mean to, whoopsie daisies. And it's like, no, you said you're going to kill every last one of them. Don't back out of this now. Now, when Ellie kills the Owen and the Mel, I think is the name of the pregnant lady, count it as 3 people if you want to. Let's not get into that right now. When she realizes that Mel was pregnant, she's sad. I think she cries. She feels bad about it. But she's not like, I didn't mean to kill. I didn't want to kill. I feel so bad about killing Abby's friends. No, killing Abby's friends was the whole goal of this mission. Abby as well, which we know you're not gonna, but it just seemed dumb. Like she's everyone in her life is telling her that it's a bad idea. Ellie even says to herself a few times that it's a bad idea. And then when she actually goes to do the idea, she never gives you any reason to believe she's remotely competent enough to pull it off, which makes it an even dumber idea. The thing about Ellie, from what she learned being with Joel, is she is a fucking murder machine. She is a monster. She is terrifying and she is extremely, extremely capable. But instead, they made her dumb. They made her make jokes all the time. Ellie doesn't make any fucking jokes in The Last of Us Part 2. Ellie's done with jokes in The Last of Us Part 2. The ha-has are done. She's talking like Batman under her breath, but like worse. I can't even tell you. Like, she's a fucking creepy, terrifying force of nature. I would rather run into Joel than Ellie, honestly, with the way that she behaves in that game. So to go from this feral, but also super smart, but also super intimidating girl to dumb little girl. All her friends tell her she's dumb and this is a bad idea. She says it's dumb and a bad idea. And then when she finally actually does a little bit of what her actual mission was, she's like, oops, did that gunshot hurt? Does it die when I shoot you? Ooh, shouldn't have done that. My bad. I didn't consider that if I came to the town with guns and shot you, you might stop living. Wild concept. One last thing. I hate that Abby wasn't a beefcake even a little bit. I didn't need her to be as ripped as she was in the game, because while there are women that get that ripped, they're not exactly easy to find, on top of them also being a good actress who looks like Abby in the face. And I think the person who played her, great job. She looks the part, does a good job acting, but I feel like not only is it an L because I feel like that made Abby more intimidating, I feel like they made Abby, now I'm putting this together now, I feel like they made Abby not as brawlic because of Ellie being smaller, because they were like, well, Bella Ramsey's tiny. If we get a beef-caked up Abby, then she's gonna fucking dominate that fight. In the game, it's like kind of a counter, because Ellie's a crazy feral beast, but Abby's strong as fuck, so it's not exactly an unformidable opponent. No, not only do I think it takes away from the intimidation, and do I think it takes away from the character. It's a fundamental part of the visual of the character, but also so many neckbeards and dorks who like to complain about wokeness being too prevalent in video games, they could not shut up about Abby being muscular. And the fact that that was taken out to me feels like conceding to that. I was also afraid that they were conceding with Mel being barely pregnant at the start of the game, but I think that's how the timeline worked. But it's actually just because literally they didn't show any of the Abby stuff after the start. So maybe Mel going into a war zone while 8 months pregnant for no reason when she does not have to is on the table in season 3. Maybe they won't change that, but I don't know. I just felt like that, plus the lack of the trans male character. Trying to remember. Lev, the right name? Can't remember. Abby and Lev. That sounds right. Yes. Okay. Obviously, that was just for the structure of things, but I was just like, man, y'all guys really neutered all of this stuff. What, to concede? I hope it's not that. Actually, I do have one thing, a note that I skipped over. The emotional, bittersweet end to the second game is kind of what saved it for me, because The Last of Us 2 is very much not what I wanted it to be, but I also recognize that it was a very well-made product. However, what might have genuinely improved my number score by like an extra point is at the very end when she's trying to kill Abby and it flashes back to the scene where Ellie tells Joel that she wants to try and start to forgive him, and we know this is the night before he dies. It's so sad, but it's also so nice to know that Joel, at the very least, got this little dash of hope to cling on, this little light among all that darkness. Not that he necessarily deserves it. I don't want to get into the nuances of that, but it was great. And and it's just in the middle of this season for some reason. Like, probably the most emotionally resonant piece of the entire story of that game, I think, killed by where it was placed in the story. I think they'll repeat the scene again in season 3, and it's not gonna hit because you've already fucking seen it. But yeah, that's it. The Last of Us. What did you guys think? Let me know in the comment section below. But that is it. Goodbye.